Salvatore Babunis is also with us. Professor Babunis, how do you see Modi 3.0, even as the former Speaker of the Lok Sabha, Om Birla, also enters the Rashtrapati Bhavan forecourts? Good evening. Thank you for joining us on this special broadcast, Professor Salvatore Babunis. Your thoughts,
Good
sir?
evening. Obviously, I have no inside knowledge to share with you about who will be appointed to which post or how long they may stay in it. But the fact is that this coalition government is fundamentally a BJP government. Non-BJP members of the coalition are likely to be much more interested in specific favors for their states and their electorates than they are to be in national power. We tend to think of coalitions as sharing national government, but let's remember this coalition is one with a major party at the center of it that holds 240 out of the 272 necessary seats. The three main coalition partners are not themselves national parties, but are instead parties whose seats are all in one particular state. Sectional interests, particular statewide interests, are likely to play a much larger role in their considerations than any demands for a major national level policy portfolio.
But how do you see this impacting India's image globally and also the global outlook, Prime Minister Narendra Modi?
There'll be very little practical difference. Now, people who don't follow India closely seem to believe that coalition government will somehow mean they view this as a positive thing, as a moderation of Narendra Modi's very aggressive nationalism. But I don't see that happening. Everybody in India is nationalist by Western standards. And when the Wall Street Journal editorializes, or the Washington Post for that matter, editorializes that coalition partners will somehow rein in the BJP. Now, I'm using their words, not my words. I think that's some kind of fantasy view of Indian politics. It results from a very simplistic outsider perspective on how political power works in India or in any developing country. The fact is that Indian politics are driven by Indian considerations, not by international imaginations, and the BJP has firm control over this coalition.
But how would you see geopolitics coming into play? I'm sure you would have seen how the CCP mouthpiece Global Times reacted. There are challenges. We as a nation, India as a rising as a nation is a beacon, is a lighthouse amidst economies and nations going into deep recession the world over, and especially in the subcontinent, Professor Babunis.
Of course there are challenges, but those challenges are not affected by this election. The TDP and the JDU and the Shiv Sena are not going to be interested in weakening Narendra Modi's cards that he can play in international negotiations. If anything, they'll all be dedicated to strengthening that hand in international negotiations. What's more, with the Indian economy now growing at something like 8% or more per year, India's hand in international affairs is only going to be strengthening, not falling in any way. When Narendra Modi goes to talk to the G7, he'll be talking as the leader of a very powerful rising nation, not as the leader of a coalition government. It's India that is the partner here in international affairs, not the coalition.
Any sociological insights that the election and the voting patterns threw up, Professor Babunis, for you? And how do you see that, impacting the road ahead for India as a nation?
Remember that elections are not fought for seat numbers, they're fought for vote percentages. The seat numbers are an artifact. They happen afterwards. So let me remind everybody that in the 2014 election, that most Indian commentators thought of as a massive Narendra Modi win. I mean, in 2014, Narendra Modi was hailed as the new Caesar in India, or to use a more Indian analogy, the new Nehru in India. Yet in that election, the BJP won only 31% of the national vote share. The BJP in the 2024 election dramatically outperformed that 2014 election. Yet the rhetoric is of a BJP in in collapse somehow. Now, the fact is that the BJP has modestly underperformed what it did in 2019. From a sociological perspective, the BJP is within the margin of error of the 2019 elections. There's been no massive shift in Indian society or its voting patterns. However, because India has a multi-party system intersecting with a first past the post system, that small change or small variations in vote percentages have resulted in this outsized reduction in seat counts. Again, I want to remind you, the BJP won an outright majority of 282 seats with a vote count that was 4.5 percentage points lower than today's vote percentage in 2014. So sociologically speaking, very little has changed in India since 2019. What's changed has simply been the arithmetic of how that vote count plays out in India's multi-party system.
True, and it's also about how the opposition has recalibrated. You have Eknath Shinde there along with Ajit Pawar sitting there, some of the other chief ministers present. Interesting insights.